Hello and welcome to Code Tutorials. In this video, we're going to take a look at how to create comparative displays of your products. We'll be doing this with the help of the product comparison widget from the Qi Addons for Elementor Premium plugin. Right now we're on the widgets page, and this is where we can see some examples of its use and how it can be styled or put together. The product comparison widget allows us to create tables where we'll select for display specific products from all those we made for our WooCommerce shop. And then we can choose which characteristics of those products we want to highlight and use as comparison points. Moreover, there are different ways you can style this widget. You can also combine it with other page elements such as background images and titles, or with other widgets from the Qi Addons collection. Additionally, this widget comes with numerous options of its own. You can pick how the table itself will look, its background color, whether you'll be showing images of your products, which characteristics of theirs you'll be showing in the table, and more. You can also decide how you want to arrange the product characteristics used for comparison, which ones will be at the top of the table and which ones will be at the bottom, closer to the Add to Cart button. You can choose to omit the Add to Cart button, or you can make it the first thing of note after the product image, like in this example. But I've only scratched the surface with this introduction. Let's take a closer look now at how this widget works. Over in the back end, this is the page I'll be working on. You can see I prepared the section where I'll be adding the product comparison widget beforehand. So now I can just start by searching for the widget in the Elements sidebar. Just start typing its name, and there it is. Now drag it over to the page. And this is what the widget looks like when it's just been added. We can see it says please choose desired products. And we won't be able to see the comparison table until we've added the products that we'll be comparing. For that, of course, we need to have products already made in WooCommerce. Then we can go here to the Choose Products field and start adding products. It opens a drop-down that will show all your products. I only made a handful because I need them for the tutorial, but you'll likely have many more products here than I do. But don't worry, you don't have to scroll through this list to pick out the ones you want. You can simply start typing and the product with that name will pop up. There. Then, to keep adding products, click on the plus sign and keep looking for the appropriate names. Give me a second. I just need to find the ones I want. There we go. I'm making a comparison table with these 3 products. And the default display, once we've added the products, includes the product image, title, price, and stock overview. So before we make any changes to that, we can look to the options to adjust the order by setting. You can pick any of these in the drop-down, but I plan on keeping the products ordered by the date when they were made. But for the order option, I'll switch the settings so they're shown in ascending order. Alright, and now we've come to the fields to show, or the items. We have 4 items here and they correspond to the 4 pieces of information being compared in our table here. The first item is, by default, the product image. You can replace that with any of the options offered in this drop-down menu. I'll set image, title, and price for my first item. And now we can see how the tables changed. We have this products label on the left, and the products we're comparing have their image, title, and price shown within a single table cell. Since I have all that displayed, for my second item, which shows the title, I'll change the setting to rating. There we go. The rating is right under the first item. Okay, then for the third item, I'll switch the price, as it's already shown above, with availability. That gets us this line item showing whether the product is in stock. Given that the fourth item is identical to this, I'm going to switch its setting of availability to Add to Cart. And that will insert the Add to Cart button for each of the products to my comparison table. Here it is. And right under the initial set of options, we have the options for changing the button we just added. Now, I won't cover this in detail as we have a separate video for all the different options and features you get with the buttons from Qi Addons. So, the settings here are the same ones you'd get with any other button, namely the layout, which can be filled, outlined, or textual, the type, which can be standard with inner border or icon boxed, the option to enable the button text underline, which I'll switch to yes. So now I have this line under the button text. And we have the size option with the normal, small, large, and normal full width settings. Okay. After that, we have the button icon section. You can use it to add an icon next to your button text and determine whether it will be positioned on the left or the right. I don't plan on using an icon, so I'll just carry on. And that brings us to the rating section. Other than the layout option, this section contains two fields for uploading the rating icons. The first is for the marked or filled in stars, and the second is for the unmarked or empty ones. The icons we use can be SVGs or they can be from the icon library. In fact, let me open it. The default icon is this one from the library. So you can replace it with another one, or, like me, you can opt for an SVG. Before adding the new icons, I'll just remove the old ones. There, and OK. Now I'll click here to add the SVG icon, and I'll use this first one that's ticked already as my icon. Insert. OK, we can't see it now because it's transparent, but I'll be adjusting the style later. And I'll select the same icon for the second field as well. That's the one. Insert. If you watched our video on the rating widget, then you know that it's important to use icons with the same dimension because the marked and unmarked icons are positioned so they overlap. And by picking the same icon in both fields, I've ensured that they will be properly layered while giving myself the freedom to style the icons separately based on whether they belong to the marked or unmarked type. Alright, after this we have the developer tools section. There is just one option in here, and when we switch its setting to yes, it displays the widget in the form of a WordPress shortcode which can easily be copied for use elsewhere on our site. Okay, and underneath that we have the help section. It contains some helpful links and resources should you need them. That brings us to the end of the content tab. We can move on now to the style tab. The first section of the options here will help us style some general things about the comparison table, such as the table layout. The default one is auto, and this is what it looks like. We can replace that with fixed, which gets us this look. We have more space for the labels, and the columns with the product information are more compact. I'll keep this setting. Then the next option is for setting the minimal width of the entire table. When I start to increase, nothing much happens until I reach 1300 pixels and over. This is the width of my grid and the space that my product comparison is set to fit. Going over that adds a slider to the element. That's really useful if you set a large number of products to be compared. However, given that I only have 3, I'll simply clear this. Okay, there. After that, we have the border style option. It's set to all, so right now we have a light blue faintly visible border dividing all the table cells. So, before I show you the alternative to that, let me adjust the border settings so it's clearer to see. I'll set the border type to solid, then increase the width to 2 pixels, and finally change the color to something darker. There, perfect. Now it's much easier to see how the border goes around the entire table and all the cells. And if we go back to the border style option, we can change it to inside only. As the name suggests, this setting keeps the border only on the inside of the table, so it's just between the cells. Other than that, we can set it to none, and that would switch the border off entirely. That's what I plan on doing. But first, a brief note. If you intend to keep the border, you can change its type, so it's dotted or dashed or something else instead of solid. However, as I don't plan on using a border, I'll just switch this to none. And, in fact, when I switch the border style to none, the border type option will disappear since we don't need it. So, moving on, we have the column table cell padding. This option lets us add more space above and below the label text, or the title text if you prefer, in the cells on the left-hand side. There's some default padding, so increasing the values doesn't show immediate change, But once you've exceeded that, there, we can see how this pushes the entire table to stretch lengthwise. For my plan design, I'll set 55 pixels here. Alright, then we have cell padding. This lets us add space all around the content of our table cells. So this applies to both the labels and the content. And for the value here, I'll set 30 pixels all around. There, great. After that, we can adjust the width of the first column. The first column is the one with the labels, this one, and we can adjust its width either with the slider or by typing in a new value. I'm going to switch to percentages for this as they will keep the width and my element by extension adaptable to different screens, and I'll set 19. So this column will represent slightly less than a fifth of the entire element. Then, after this, we can pick the background style. The default one, Simple, allows us to set a single color as the table background. Let me show you. There, any one color you'd like to set. Other than that, we can set the style to row content. With this, we get two background color options. The first will let us change the color of the column with labels, like so, and the second will cover the rest of the table, like so. Alright, that was the row content setting. The next one is alternating. That one also gives us two color options, but these will affect rows rather than columns. And as its name suggests, it will be alternating rows that show the colors. For example, it can look something like this. And let me undo this. Our last style setting is varied colors. And that gets us a lot more color options than any of the settings before. That's because this setting is like a combination of all those that came before. It lets us mix the colors across rows and columns for the entire table. Let me show you. When I set the first color, it changes alternating rows only in the first column, the one with labels. As this is the style setting I plan on using, I'll just add the hex code for the color I want. And I'll do the same as we go through all the other color options. Alright. The second color option is for the remaining rows in the first column. In my case, that's these two. So again, I'll set the hex code I want to use. There. Then we have the third color. As you can see, it affects alternating rows in alternating columns. Let me add my hex code for this. Okay. Then the fourth color covers the remaining rows in those columns that have the third color. Give me a sec to type in my hex code. There, alright. And our fifth color affects every other row in every other column. My table only shows it on the middle column because I only set 3 products to be compared. If I had more, there would be more instances of the fifth color. Okay, now let me set the hex code. There. And finally, the sixth color fills in the leftover cells in those columns that are affected by the fifth color. It sounds complicated when you say it, but when you look at it, it's very simple. Let me change the final color. There, some lovely pastel colors for my table. Now, after this, we have the row title style section. Here we can make adjustments to the title text, the content of our first column. The title tag is set to H6 by default, and I'm happy keeping it that way. Then the row title color lets us change the color of the title text, as you can see here. Alright, and finally we have the row title typography. It contains options that let us change the font family for the titles. There is an extensive selection to choose from. We can also change the font size, like so. I'll set 17 pixels for mine. Following that, the weight option lets us change the font weight. You can choose any of the values here. Then the transform option lets us turn the text, for example, uppercase. I'll be keeping mine like this. Then we have the style option with the following settings. The decoration option with its own selection of settings. And finally, the line height, letter spacing, and word spacing options, if you'd like to make any adjustments to the spaces there. And those were the row title typography options. In the section under that, we have the cell content options. Those include the cell content color for changing the color of the text and any icons in the table cells. we can see how all the product-related content changes its color. I'll clear this as I'm happy keeping the original color. Then we have the cell content typography options. They are identical to the title typography options we saw a second ago. So I won't go over them again. Instead, I'll just make the adjustments I need for my planned design. And that means changing the font weight to 500, okay, and transforming the text to uppercase. That's it. Then we have the cell content alignment option. I want my content to be in the center, so I'll switch to that. Perfect. We can see it shifted. The rating is still on the left, but like the Add to Cart button, there are other option sections for adjusting them, and we'll get to them a bit later. For now, let's move on to image style. There's just the image proportions option in here, and it lets us change how our product images will be displayed. There are several settings to choose from. Let me show you, for example, the thumbnail setting. There. This illustrates that you need to think of several things when picking your image proportions, such as the padding you set, how many products you're showing, meaning what is the total width of the element and the available column space, and so on. I specifically prepared images that would fit the element, so I'll go back to using the original setting. Alright. After this, we have the product title style options. So with these, we can change the color of the product titles. That's this. The name you gave the product when making it in WooCommerce. Okay. Besides that, there's the product title typography. Again, the selection of typography options is the same throughout, and given that I made the adjustments I wanted under cell content style, I can simply carry on now. However, if you want to make the product title distinct from the rest in some way, you can do so here. Finally, we have the product title margin top. This option lets us add more space over the product title, so we can distance it from the image if we want to. I'll set this to 13 pixels. There. After this, we have the price style section. It contains the price color option, so we can easily change the color of the product price to emphasize it. You can see how it's changed here. Another way to emphasize the price is by changing one of the typography options. They are the same as the ones we've seen before, so you already know what possibilities they offer. Then we have the price margin top option. That's for increasing the space above the price, this here. I'm going to put 2 pixels for this. And accompanying it, we have the price margin bottom. That's for changing the space under the price, here. And it works like this. I'll put 17 pixels for it. Alright, that's it for the price style. The next section is for button style. Maybe you recall me mentioning earlier that the Add to Cart button, this, has separate options from the rest of the content. Well, these are it. For starters, we have the typography options. I'll use them right away to change the font weight for the button text to 700 and transform it to uppercase. After that, there's the text color. It has this usual color picker, and we can see that the default color is black or something close to it. I'll go the completely opposite way to make my text white. And because of that change, I'll switch the background color too. Rather than use a slider, I'll set a hex code as I know exactly what shade I want. There, perfect. After this, we have the border color option. It works in concert with several other border options. Let me show you. When you set a color, you need to increase the border width too for it to become visible. And then you'd get something like this. So that's just one idea. I'm not planning on using a border, but I'll leave it for now while I show you the hover options. It will make it easier to see how different you can make the button on hover. So the hover options are pretty similar to the normal options. We have the text color on hover, and it looks like this. Then we have the button background color on hover, so that's this. And we have the border color on hover. When I set black, the border melts into the button background. But if I set something brighter, there. The border width you set is the same one you'll have for both the normal and on-hover display. The next option we have is the reveal background. I need to set the background hover color to show you this. And then when I change this from none to horizontal, we get this effect. The background hover color comes in horizontally to take over. And let me show you the vertical setting too. It comes in from the bottom, like this. Okay, as nice as these effects are, they're not part of my planned design, so I'll reset all these options here, as well as the border color under normal, and the width too. Then we have this option, the border radius. Despite its name, it will affect the button even if you don't set a border. It helps us curve the button corners. In fact, we can see that there is a slight radius already here by default as the corners are softened slightly. You can increase that and get even rounder edges here. Alternatively, you can set 0 and it will remove the default radius to get you a button with sharp corners. This is what I'll be keeping for my button. Then we have the padding option. With it, we can adjust the space around the button text and in doing so affect the button size. Unless you want to increase all sides evenly, you can click here to delink the fields and then set each side separately. I'll do that and put 14 pixels at the top, 40 on the right, 13 at the bottom and 40 on the left. Alright, perfect. Now the next two sections don't apply to me. Why? Well, I haven't added an icon to my button, so there's nothing for me to style using the button icon style options. And it's the same for the button inner border style section. I'm not using the button with inner border, so I can't style something I don't have. However, the third section, the button underline style, is something that I can use since I enabled an underline for my button text. And the options here will let me style it. For starters, I can change its color. And then you can see it here. Then I'll undo this. Then we can change the underline width. You can see it's much shorter now, and if you decide to keep it that way, you can use the underline alignment option below to change its position. It's set to the left by default, but we can move it to the right, like so, or the center, like so. However, the underline option won't have much effect unless you reduce the width. Because if I go back up and switch this to percentages and set 100, then the line has nowhere to go. It takes up the full width of the space available for it. However, when you hover, the animated effect on the line draws it towards the center now. I'll put this back to left, and then there, the line is drawn to the left. I'll be keeping it this way. The next option is the underline offset. We can use it to shift the underline closer to or further away from the button text. I'm going to set 6 for this, so the line is quite close to the text. After that, we have the underline thickness. It's very straightforward. You can use it to make the line thicker. I'll set 2 pixels for mine. So all these were the options for the normal display. We have a few others for the display on hover. These include, I'll start with the underline hover width. You can use it to set a different width than you'd have normally, and then hovering over the button would show that different line width. Besides that, you can change the underline hover color. Then your line can be markedly different. And we have one more thing here, this option that lets us enable an animated effect for the underline. It's set to no by default, but if we switch it to yes, then we'll have this livelier animation. I'll return this to no as I don't plan on using it for my design. And I'll clear the width too. Okay, with that we covered all the button underline style options, so I'll close this. And now we can see that there's only one section left, the rating style. In it we have options that allow us to adjust the look of our star rating. So now we can change the alignment to center and make it match the rest of the table content. There. Perfect. Then we have the spacing option, if we want to separate the icons a bit. I don't want to overdo this, so I'll put 2 pixels for it. After this, we have the icon size. You can change the size using the slider or by typing in a new value, like I'm doing. Okay, the icons are much smaller now, but they match the font size I'm using. And finally, we have the color options that will let us distinguish the rating values for the products. There's the marked color. Let me set something. Okay. We can see almost all the icons show their new color except this little one here. That's because this product has a 4-star rating and the others have 5 stars. So the marked color lets us distinguish the product rating, which stars are filled, so to speak. And the unmarked color serves to provide a contrast to that and show which stars remain empty. Okay, I'll set the colors I want now. The marked will be a yellowish orange, and the unmarked will be, you can see how it changes. This one will be a much paler yellow. There, and my element is done. Before we finish up, there's one more thing I wanted to show you, and that is the second layout for the rating icons. So let's head back to the Content tab, go to the Rating section, and there we can see this layout option. I'm using the default setting, Standard. We can see what that looks like. But there is a second setting available, Split. With that one, the marked and unmarked stars are split style-wise. So they can have different colors, but also the marked and unmarked icons have different sizes set for them. And indeed, if we go to the Style tab and return to the Rating Style section from earlier, we'll see that there is one more option here now, the Icon Split Size. With it, we can adjust the size of the unmarked icon, whereas the original icon size option will work only on the marked icons now. Okay, that's what I wanted to share here. Let me go back and reset the rating layout, as Standard is the one I want to use for my plan design. There, okay. And since my element is done, I'll hit Update to save my work. Perfect. So this is my finished product comparison. I've selected 3 products to showcase and made a colorful table with all the product information I wanted shown. Now, this was just one possibility for what you can do with a product comparison widget. If you need more ideas, you can go back to the page we started from. The different examples shown here are bound to, at least, provide you with some inspiration. Additionally, since you now know exactly how this widget works and how to set it up, you can break these examples down and recreate them on your own site. Of course, you can also create something completely different. It's up to you to decide how this widget will benefit your site most. Ultimately, we hope you found this tutorial on the product comparison widget from the Qi Addons for Elementor plugin to be helpful. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please drop us a line in the comment section below. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel and be the first to learn about any new tutorials and theme guides. Thank you for watching.